Hello everybody, welcome to this week's video. So today we're talking about sacred sexuality. And this is a topic that, although I've known about it for a couple of years and I understand the basics of sacred sexuality, it's only something like fairly recently that I've been called to like dive deeper into it. So this video is very much coming at it from sharing what I've learned, but also very much coming from like the student kind of place. Like, oh, here's what I've learned, and I'm going to share it with you. I think it's really cool. That kind of place. So, if you've been following my work, you might hear me talking about original wounds, patriarchy, that kind of thing a lot. That framework really informs what I do because I do see a lot of the suffering of the planet is coming back to these ancient original wounds, and the ripple effect is just it manifests in like so many different areas of our lives that are unbeknownst to us. So and so in this vein, if you see patriarchy as being one of these original wounds, and I'll kind of like maybe dive into that a bit more. But in that sense, it's like sexuality in that case is very much tied to these original wounds, and healing sexuality and like changing our relationship to it has profound implications for us and for healing the planet. So, how I look at development of patriarchy, which happened, 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, it has these ripple effects of, creating stratification of society, war, hierarchy, as well as obviously this imbalanced relationship between the genders. I see it as patriarchy creating like this split between the masculine and the feminine. If you imagine the yin yang symbol, it's like even though you see the split, it's still the one. But I see what patriarchy has done is like it creates a split, separating out the yin and the yang, and it suppresses and demonizes the yin, right, the feminine. So in this sense, like this is reflected in our relationship to sexuality. So you can see this in terms of, like things like BDSM. I'm not here to kink shame anybody. And, I've obviously, like, maybe not obviously, but yes, I have dabbled in like kink a little bit. And it's like, but like if you study ancestral trauma and how trauma gets passed through and manifests in sexuality, it's like this kind of thing. It's a manifestation of ancestral trauma. And it's not just like kink in general, it's just like, you can see in the masculine feminine dynamic, there is this like distortion of like power over power under, right? And it becomes like eroticized. And in my view, I do think that's a way to transmute. There's an attempt in this primordial psyche to transmute like these original wounds of patriarchy, of like domination and control of the yin. On one side, the yin has trauma of like experiencing this oppression and suppression, and the other side, the yang, has a trauma of like, inflicting, like if you have to harm another human being, that even though you're in like the power position, that's still a trauma to yourself because you're disconnected from your own humanity, right? So our original forefathers who, committed these acts of war and violence and rape, they're passing on their trauma of like, being compelled to do these things through like, even though we all have the masculine and feminine within us, it's like, like if you have more of the femme energy, like you're going to be carrying more of the femme wounding. If you carry more masc energy, you're going to carry more of the masc wounding. So how this comes back to sacred sexuality, it's like healing these distortions, these ancient distortions, in our sexual energy and in our relationship to, our complementary. So if you're more feminine, then relationship to the masculine. If you're masculine, relationship to the feminine, right? So sacred sexuality is all about healing that, bringing it into unity once again. And so, of course, that starts within ourselves, healing the relationship with our own inner feminine, inner masculine. Part of the thing of ancient original wounds is that it creates like these huge attachment wounds, right? We've disconnected from the earth, which is like one of the manifestations of patriarchy, the earth mother. And this is reflected in disconnection from our caregivers. This, children become property under patriarchy, and this creates a wounding in the attachment relationship. And so this creates like a void, right? And so there's so many manifestations of void filling in society, in the world, but one of them is obviously sex and like codependency. Like, oh, I need another partner to complete me. I'm not complete without a partner. And it's not to say that like you shouldn't want that for yourself, but it's the need to have that. That I'm not complete without that. That's the problem. That's like the wound talking. So first, it's about like finding the inner feminine masculine within us. So in terms of sexuality, it's yeah, it's like learning how to feel that energy within us and not just use it exclusively like with a partner. You know, the sexual energy is the creative life force. It is so powerful, and that's why it's been, you know, it's been distorted and manipulated. You know, we use like you can even see in terms of like uh, the economy, right? It's all about like exploiting people, exploiting their energy in service of like this machine that eats and eats and eats and never gets satisfied. You know, this endless consumption that is like ruining the planet, that kind of thing. So, like, if we take back the sovereignty over our sexuality, it has massive implications. So, yeah, it's like, first, it's like, you know, getting in, whether you're male or female, or, you know, like that's biology, right? And then, or you're, whatever, wherever you are on the gender spectrum, and, you know, of course, there's going to be nuances depending on where you're on the gender spectrum in terms of like relating to your masculine and feminine energy. But, you know, this is like a general overview. So it's first like learning how to cultivate that energy within yourself, learning how to feel it, because most of us are cut off from our stomach, genitals down. So it's like part of it is just like reassociating to that part of our body and like actually feeling it. And then, you know, feeling that energy within and being able to channel it in ways that are just not just like physical, but you know, like maybe through dance or just like through breath work or through like channeling it into like a passion project, that kind of thing. So, and then of course, like once you like kind of master it within yourself, like whether you're wherever you're on the gender spectrum, and it's gonna look different, like depending on where you're on the gender spectrum. I think like in terms of if you're like assigned male at birth, and you know you have like the same hormones that you had when you were born, then yeah, looking into like no fap I think is really great because it teaches you how to like not be codependent on like using sexual energy in like a certain way, in an addictive way, and really tapping into that energy and like being able to channel it into what you want instead of just like one avenue. um Yeah, because you know, like things like porn, right? It's like heavily manipulated to produce like a certain like addiction, codependency, and a certain way of like distorting like the. I mean, not all porn is terrible, but it's like there's obviously really good porn out there that's like ethical and like it's made intentionally, but like the majority of porn is like not, and it's used to kind of feed like this addictive tendency, this codependent tendency. So, yeah, just like thinking about a relationship to porn and like our sexual energy and our daily practices regarding sexuality and like can we use it more intentionally? Can we use it in less of an addictive way? So, yeah, and then, you know, so once we kind of like master it within ourselves, then it comes to like how, when we're in partnership, like how do we use that energy? So, so yeah, like there's like techniques that this is like the part that I'm still learning. So I'm just gonna relate what I've like what I've learned. But basically, you know, things like, you know, breathing together, like when one partner like breathes, the other person exhales, and then you just do that for a couple of rounds and then switch, or like or you know, bringing the energy instead of like bringing the energy just like into an orgasm and letting it be that, it's just like kind of cultivating the energy and using it to move instead of just like down and out into an explosion. It's more like using it to move up the body so that you can like use it for like spiritual activation as well. And in terms of that, it's like, so yeah, that's like kind of using it, that energy in partnership in like a intentional way. But it's also like when you're in partnership, it's like being mindful of like how energy can affect you negatively as well. So it's like, um, yeah, because it's like most of us we're in Western culture anyway. We kind of we're taught under like hookup culture. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like you're a free liberated woman, go sleep with whatever. You're a free liberated man, go sleep with whoever. um, and it's like, I do think there is a lot of positives that's come with that, with like a free sexual culture, but it's also like, but yeah, as I mentioned before, there's like the distortion in mainstream religion, which is like sex is bad, you should only save it for marriage, versus like sex is no big deal and doesn't really matter who you have sex with. I definitely think there should be like a middle ground between that. It's just like, yeah, sex isn't shameful or dirty, but like it is a very powerful energy, and like it, like you can use it in like a really intentional and high vibrational way, or you can use it in a, like an unconscious way. And it's like, which do you want? And like, you guys, and like sexual energy does affect like your spirit and your psyche. Like it just doesn't like stay within. It's not like you have sex and you're done. It's like, that stuff can like linger into your spirit, and so you want to make sure that like the energy after that is like clear and balanced. So like learning like basic energetic hygiene techniques. So like for example, like if you feel sad after sex, like that, there could be so many different reasons, but a lot of that could definitely also be just like taking on stuff that's not yours, right? So especially if like you're the receptive partner, like that's definitely more of a thing, right? So yeah, just like being aware of like using energy in a way that is like, um yeah, like using it for like higher spiritual purpose, for like deeper connection, intimacy, that kind of thing. And also like being aware of like ways it can be used negatively, and like just having a basic awareness of that and doing your due diligence. So yeah, like that's pretty much like this trajectory I've been kind of like guided to go down, and I'm really excited to learn more. And I'll definitely link like some people where I've been learning some of these things. I think it's interesting because I do think there's like something in the collective that is like, um that's like on like this wavelength of healing sexuality. Because I know, like for example, like sex education came out like 2 weeks ago, and that was around the same time where Spirit was like, "Hey, like you gotta look into this avenue like more deeply." And so yeah, I think there's something there. So yeah, hopefully that inspires you to kind of think about sexuality, or be inspired to like try something else in sexuality. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next week. Goodbye.